My lazy parents crashed my house closing with champagne and demanded to be added to the deed. Hi, I'm Ethan, 33, and last fall I bought my first home, an unassuming ranch in Denver with west-facing mountain views. That should have been the start of peace. Instead, my parents stormed into the closing office with a $9 bottle of sparkling wine and a demand to be added to the deed. It was September 14th, 2023, and I was sitting in the title company's office, pen poised over documents that would make me a homeowner for the first time in my life. The house wasn't fancy, just a 3-bed, red brick ranch built in the 50s with creaky hardwood floors and a view that made me breathe a little deeper. I was finally here. I'd clawed my way out of student loan hell, bounced between 10 rental apartments, and hit 6 digits in my career as a senior software engineer. This wasn't just a house. It was a finish line. Then the door slammed open. Surprise! My mom chirped, waddling in like she owned the place. She was 61, carrying a warm bottle of Cook's and a smile stretched too tight. Dad, 64, followed in his sagging cargo shorts, his eyes already scanning the room like he was casing it for resale. I blinked. What are you doing here? We heard from your cousin on Facebook, Mom said, dropping the bottle onto the table like it was Dom Perignon. You didn't invite us to the closing, so we invited ourselves. This is a family milestone. Dad nodded solemnly. And we figured while we're all here, you should just go ahead and add us to the deed. Joint tenants with right of survivorship. You know, for protection. The title agent, Karen, a woman whose bun was so tight it gave me a headache just looking at it, literally froze mid-sentence. Excuse me? I asked. Oh, don't be dramatic, Mom said, waving her acrylics like I was overreacting. It's smart, Ethan. If something happens to you, we keep it in the family. Dad leaned forward like he was making a business pitch. And we're struggling, son. My back's been out since that warehouse fall in 2012. Social Security barely covers the RV payment. This house could be our retirement plan. That's when I laughed. Not from amusement, from disbelief. It was a jagged, gut-born sound that made Karen bolt from the room to check the paperwork. Mom dropped the grin. Don't play dumb, Ethan David Miller. We know how much you make. Lisa showed us your LinkedIn update. $214,000 a year in stock options? You think you get to keep all that after everything we sacrificed? Dad jumped in like he'd been waiting. We raised you. That's nearly $400,000 in food, clothes, and shelter. Conservative estimate. You owe us. I stared at them, stunned but not surprised. This wasn't new. This was chapter 400 in the saga of You Exist Because of Us. I remembered every time they'd guilt me since I was 6, from the Christmas I wanted a PlayStation and got a used Game Boy and a 2-hour lecture, to the day I found out my college savings had been drained to cover emergency upgrades on their RV. But now, they were trying to take the house I bled for. And they didn't know the weapon I had in my briefcase. I reached into my leather briefcase, gift to myself on the day I got promoted, and pulled out the thick cream envelope I'd carried like a secret weapon for nearly 2 years. Embossed seal. Goldstein and Associates. Grandma Elena's lawyers. Mom's eyes locked on it like a raccoon spotting a shiny object. She snatched it from my hand without even asking. Dad shuffled over, looming behind her, like this was a football huddle and they were reviewing the playbook. Page 1, The Irrevocable Trust of Elena Martinez. Sole beneficiary, Ethan D. Miller. Page 2, Clause 7, The Real Nuke. Grandma had written it after Mom tried to move into her house, to help, back in 2017. It read, in the event my daughter, Marlene, or her husband, Ronald Miller, attempt to interfere with or contest this trust or any assets purchased therewith, including but not limited to real property, they shall be deemed to have predeceased me for the purposes of distribution. Mom gasped like she'd just been slapped by a ghost. She wouldn't do this to me. She did, I said calmly. After you threatened to put her in a nursing home unless she signed over the 5 points duplex. She recorded it. Exhibit C. You remember Christmas 2016? Dad stepped back. His hands clenched. This is all fake. Goldstein's a scam artist. I slid his business card across the table. Call him. He's expecting you. Again. Karen reappeared in the doorway, saw the atmosphere had curdled into something acidic, and offered a brittle smile. Are we ready to proceed? 5 minutes, I said. She vanished. That's when the mask fully fell. Mom leaned forward, her perfume thick and sour. Here's how this works, Ethan. You add us to that deed, or we will make this hell. We'll file liens. Talk to lawyers. You remember what we did to your cousin when she didn't add Aunt Teresa to her condo title? Dad puffed up like a Walmart pit bull. We'll sue. We'll call Channel 9. We'll tell everyone how you stole from your own dying grandmother. And that's when I smiled. Really smiled. Not out of joy, out of relief. Because they had just handed me the last shred of justification I needed. You remember the down payment? I said. That $117,000? Traced directly from trust funds. This house is untouchable. Dad's face went purple. You poisoned her against us. She watched you rot on the couch for 30 years. I said. I just stayed out of her way. Mom's voice dropped to a hiss. We're your parents. You were. I said. Now you're two people trespassing in a room you weren't invited into. Karen poked her head in again. Mr. Miller? I stood. Picked up the pen. Proceeding. Just my name. The signature felt better than any therapy session I've ever paid for. Ethan Daniel Miller. Sole owner. Mom stood, shaking with rage. How dare you, after everything we gave you? I looked her in the eye. You gave me life. And then spent 33 years charging interest. They stormed out, slamming doors, spitting threats. But they were done. Or so I thought. They waited exactly 3 months. On December 28, 2023, while I was hungover from a friend's engagement party and halfway through a Chipotle burrito, a process server knocked on my brand new front door. Nice guy. Looked genuinely uncomfortable when he handed me the envelope. Good luck, he muttered before turning back to his car like it was on fire. Inside, a 39-page lawsuit filed in Arapahoe County. Plaintiffs, Ronald and Marlene Miller. Defendant, Ethan D. Miller. The accusations were laughable if they weren't terrifying. That I had exerted undue influence over my grandmother. That she was mentally compromised at the time of the trust signing. That I had fraudulently obtained real estate assets with misappropriated funds. That the court should invalidate the trust, nullify my house purchase, and force a sale of the property, with proceeds split 3 ways between them and me. They were trying to take my house. My house. They'd found a lawyer willing to take it on contingency, some bottom feeder named Gary Frink, whose face I recognized from the ads on bus benches. You don't pay unless we win. Yeah. That guy. I called David Goldstein before I even finished reading page 3. I was wondering when they'd try. He said with a sigh and a chuckle. Let's bury them. He quoted me $15,000 for full defense representation. Worth every penny, he added. He was right. We spent months gathering documentation. Grandma's mocha cognition tests, 29 out of 33 weeks before she signed. Visitor logs from her hospice that showed I was there 187 times in her last year. My parents? 4. One of them to borrow $20,000 for RV repairs. They left empty-handed. Goldstein even tracked down bank records from 2017 showing Mom used Grandma's old power of attorney to withdraw $8,400, one day before Grandma had it revoked. We had everything. But the piece de resistance? A video. Recorded January 2018. Grandma in her hospice bed, chemo drip in her arm, holding her iPhone in one trembling hand. If Marlene or Ronald tried to take what I left Ethan, play this. They're parasites. Always have been. Ethan worked. Ethan earned. I scrubbed floors for 40 years so my grandchildren wouldn't have to. And those two, they spent their lives on the couch. Goldstein called it a nuclear deterrent. We played it twice in pretrial deposition. Still, the court date loomed, June 11, 2024. I showed up in a tailored suit, trust paperwork in a neat leather folder. My parents arrived in clothes from Ross and righteous indignation. Frank swaggered in like he was about to argue Roe versus Wade. Opened with, "This is a case of elder abuse, plain and simple." The defendant isolated his dying grandmother and tricked her into giving him control of her entire estate. Goldstein didn't even flinch. Medical records. Legal logs. Video testimony. He said, tapping each piece of evidence like it was a chess move. This is not abuse. This is what accountability looks like when the entitled lose their grip. The judge, Han. Patricia Chan, 54, deadpan and direct, needed exactly 47 minutes before delivering her verdict. Case dismissed with prejudice. The court finds this action was filed in bad faith. Plaintiffs will pay defendants legal fees of $18,200 within 30 days. All future claims against the Elena Martinez Trust are permanently barred. Mom collapsed into genuine sobs. Dad muttered something about appeals. But me? I walked out of that courtroom free. But not done. Because outside, standing in the courthouse parking lot, shaded by the leftover snowdrift from a brutal winter, Mom had one more card to play. Ethan, she whispered. Please. The RV got repossessed. We're living in a motel off Colfax. Your father's blood pressure, he's got hospital bills. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the same woman who told me at 16 that if I got a girl pregnant, I'd better man up and figure it out because she wasn't raising any more kids. You made your choices, I said quietly. For 33 years. This is just the bill coming due. And I walked away. The fallout wasn't loud. It was quiet. Creepy quiet. No more threats. No more lawsuits. Just a steady stream of guilt-soaked letters. The first one came in November 2024, forwarded from my old apartment in Capitol Hill. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Mom's loopy cursive that always looked like it was trying too hard to be elegant. Ethan, we're being evicted December 1st. Dad's in the hospital with chest pains. The bill is over $47,000. We know we made mistakes. We're your parents. For your grandmother's sake, $25,000 would help us get an apartment and catch up on medical. Love, Mom. I sat at my fireplace, the one I'd installed that spring for $12,000, stone surround, real oak mantle, and held the letter for a long moment. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of the $180 bottle of Blanton's grandma had saved for my 30th birthday. Tossed the letter in the flames. Some fires destroy. Others cleanse. That winter, I finished renovating the house. Poured another $42,000 into the kitchen. Quartz counters. White oak cabinets. Matte black fixtures. I finally bought the gas range I'd wanted since I was 16, watching Gordon Ramsay scream at people with terrible form. The backyard deck went up next. $28,000. It took 2 months, but when it was done, I stood out there one morning with coffee and watched the sun rise behind the Rockies, gold bleeding across the peaks. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel like it had weights tied to it. And that's when Mia called. My little sister. 28, recent nursing school grad from CU Boulder. She'd been the only other person Grandma ever fully trusted. I can't afford anything decent near the hospital yet, she said. Any chance that basement's available? Rent-free, I replied before she could finish. Just help with groceries and keep my dog alive when I travel, she cried. I pretended not to hear it. 2 weeks later, she moved in with nothing but 3 duffel bags and a diploma taped to the back of her Civic. And for the first time, this house didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like home. We sat on that new deck, her with a white claw, me with a banquet, watching Max the mutt chase squirrels like it was his job. We didn't talk about Mom and Dad. Not yet. We just let the silence stretch, warm and undemanding. By spring 2025, the mortgage was halfway paid off. Early principal payments from bonuses and stock options I didn't touch unless I earned them. The trust had grown to $1.8 million, thanks to conservative investing and Grandma's lifelong refusal to spend money on anything that wasn't dented or discounted. I mentored 2 high schoolers that spring through a coding nonprofit. One of them asked me if I ever regretted not helping my parents. Helping someone doesn't mean giving them your spine, I said. Sometimes it means letting them feel the weight they tried to dump on you. And I believe that. Most days. But guilt's a tricky thing. It sneaks in at night, when the house is too quiet and the whiskey too strong. That's when the next letter arrived. March 2025. Scribbled on hotel stationery. We know we've made mistakes. But a man doesn't abandon his parents. You're acting like you were abused. We gave you everything we had. Please. We're out of options. We love you. No return address. Just the Motel 6 on East Colfax, room 112. I didn't answer. But I did drive by once. Just to see. The blinds were drawn. The RV was gone. The world had gotten very small for 2 people who used to make mine feel that way. And I felt nothing. Spring turned to summer, and for the first time in my life, I felt weightless. Not happy exactly, but clear. My sister Mia had turned the basement into a sanctuary. Plants on every windowsill, White noise machine humming like distant rain. She left for her night shifts at 6:30 p.m. Sharp in her scrubs, hair tied back, coffee thermos always in hand. And every morning when I woke up, there was a sticky note on the fridge. Max peed twice. Leftover curry in the microwave. Don't forget your meeting at 10. Love, M. It was the kind of care I didn't know I needed until I had it. By July, the trust had fully matured, $2 million, thanks to Grandma's precise instructions and Goldstein's hawk-eyed investing strategy. I didn't touch most of it. Just set up a new LLC for a side project, a mentorship fund for underrepresented students in STEM. Called it Code Clear. Grandma would have rolled her eyes at the name but been secretly proud. I coached my company's softball team, started biking to work twice a week, stopped checking Zillow obsessively because, for once, I wasn't looking to escape anything. I was already there. Then came the text. August 14th, 2025. 9:42 p.m. From unknown. Ethan. It's Dad. Your mom's in bad shape. Diabetes. They might take her foot. Please come. I sat with it for a long time. The screen glowing against the dark. Max was snoring by the fireplace. Mia was out on a double shift. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty. But because I knew what that message was, a hook. Not an update. Not a request. A lure. The kind they'd always dangled, tragedy as leverage. Pain as currency. Still, I found myself at Goldstein's office the next morning. I want to be proactive, I told him. He leaned back in his chair. Define proactive. I slid a folder across his desk. Inside, documentation to place the house in an ironclad living trust, naming Mia as successor trustee and sole occupant in case of my death. I also added clauses for any children I might have one day. No contest clause again? Stronger this time, I said. If my parents even think about claiming caretaker rights, I want them legally vaporized. Goldstein didn't blink. I'll have it notarized by Thursday. The next weekend, I hosted a barbecue. Just friends and coworkers. Mia made carne asada. I grilled mushrooms. Someone brought a karaoke machine and I watched a UX designer from my team perform Total Eclipse of the Heart like it was his audition for The Voice. At one point, I found myself at the edge of the deck, beer in hand, watching the sunset. And next to me, Sophia. My cousin. The only other person who received a chunk of Grandma's estate. She'd flown in from Albuquerque without telling anyone. You really did it, she said, nudging me with her elbow. You turned the fallout into a fortress. I grinned. Some days it still feels like a war bunker. Well, she said, sipping her drink. Some of us build walls. Others build homes with locks. We didn't say Grandma's name. We didn't need to. Later that night, Mia came upstairs in sweats and looked out over the party still going in the backyard. She sighed. You know what I realized? She said. They were always waiting for us to become their insurance policy. And now that we won't, they don't know who they are. I didn't have an answer. Just clinked my bottle against hers and whispered. To never becoming them. The next move came quietly. No texts. No calls. Just a notification. October 3rd, 2025. Email subject line. New booking request. Charming Denver Ranch. I blinked. Thought it was a spam ad. Until I clicked. It was my house. Photos taken from my own backyard. Description clearly lifted from the MLS listing I'd used when I bought it. Username. Marlene Enron Getaway 2025. They'd made a short-term rental account. They'd listed my home. While I was still living in it. While Mia was still sleeping downstairs. I sat at the kitchen island, rereading the booking requests, some couple from Phoenix trying to rent my house for the weekend, and felt my hands go cold. This wasn't desperation. This was delusion. I forwarded the listing to the platform's trust and safety team along with the deed, the original trust, the HOA rules banning short-term rentals, a letter from Goldstein. It was taken down in 18 minutes. The account was banned. But they didn't stop. A week later, I came home from work to find a key box attached to the front doorknob. The kind realtors use. It had a label. Check-in instructions. Text Ron at 720-*********. I took a photo. Removed it. Drove to the nearest Home Depot and bought a security camera kit and a new smart lock system. Then I called Goldstein. This is criminal trespass, I said. It's also incredibly stupid, he replied. But let's lock it down. Again. Within 2 days we had a cease and desist order filed, a letter sent directly to the motel they were still living in, a warning issued to the short-term rental platform that any future listings at my address would result in legal action. Mia found the whole thing half hilarious, half chilling. They're trying to sell time in a house they haven't stepped inside since you humiliated them in front of a judge. Grift doesn't require shame. I muttered. Just Wi-Fi. But what finally cracked the dam wasn't the scam. It was the postcard. Mailed from a fake property manager. Bright yellow, cartoon house logo. It said, Special fall rate. Cozy mountain view retreat with renovated kitchen and full basement suite. Ask about long-term stays. It had our address printed in bold. I stared at it, stomach dropping. Not because of the offer, but because it meant they'd sent this to people. Neighbors. Possibly co-workers. It meant they wanted people to show up. Knocking. Expecting access. Expecting to walk through my door. So I made a choice. I took a week off work. Not to rest. To fortify. First, I printed 50 flyers. Bold red letters. This property is not for rent. Any online listing is fraudulent. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Posted them around the neighborhood, taped one to the mailbox, slid a copy under every door within a 2-block radius. Next, I wrote an email. To every neighbor. To the HOA. To the community bulletin board. Attached documents. Trust. Deed. Court ruling. Finally, I updated the security system. Cameras, motion lights, autolocks. A smart doorbell with facial recognition. A chime that said, Hi. This is a private residence. In the most chipper voice known to man. And on the front steps, I put a mat that read, No, you may not come in. Mia laughed so hard she spilled her tea. They're gonna lose their damn minds, she whispered. They already have, I said. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The knock came on a Wednesday, late October. Right after I got home from work, Max barking before I even turned off the alarm system. Through the front door camera, I saw them. My parents. Looking like ghosts in human clothes. Mom had traded her usual leopard print cardigan for a pilled gray hoodie. Her dyed black roots had grown out enough to show half an inch of white. She looked smaller. Not frail, just shrunken. Like someone had turned down the saturation on her. Dad wore the same jacket I'd last seen him in, cheap pleather, cracked at the sleeves. He was sweating, even though it was barely 50 degrees outside. His eyes darted to the camera, then away. Guilty. Like a teenager caught keying a car. I didn't answer the door. Instead, I pressed the intercom button. Leave. Ethan, Mom said, stepping forward, arms half raised like she thought there was a chance I'd open it. Please. Just 5 minutes. We need to talk. You lost the right to just talk 2 lawsuits ago. I replied. And I'm not renting my house to you. Nice try, by the way. Bold move with the postcard. Dad finally found his voice. You think this is easy for us? You think we like asking? Then don't. We're your parents. He snapped, his voice rising. We gave you life. And then spent 33 years charging me for it. He started to protest, but Mom cut in. It's not about the house anymore. Ron's not doing well. His blood pressure's through the roof. He fainted at the motel. They called an ambulance. Sorry to hear it, I said. That's what Medicare's for. Her voice cracked then, that familiar shrill edge breaking like glass. Are you seriously going to stand there and do nothing? No. I'm going to press charges if you try to list my house again. Then I tapped the screen and ended the call. Watched them stand there for a moment, stunned, like the script had gone off book and they didn't know what to do without their usual scene partner of guilt and obligation. They left. Not fast. Not slow. Just defeated. But the storm wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from their lawyer. Gary Frink. Again. They were filing for conservatorship. Of me. Claiming I was mentally unstable and squandering inherited family assets. They attached a handful of cherry-picked emails and out-of-context texts from 2019, including one where I joked to Mia during my burnout phase. Sometimes I wish someone else would just take over and let me sleep for a year. They tried to use that. Goldstein's reply to the court was 6 pages long. Calm. Brutal. Laced with legal precedent so sharp it could draw blood. It was dismissed without a hearing. But the message was clear. They would burn down everything before they accepted a single no. Mia found me on the deck that night. I hadn't turned on the string lights. Just sat in the dark with a beer, Max at my feet. They won't stop, I muttered. They're like locusts. She nodded. Then maybe it's time we salt the earth. And that's when we made the plan. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't petty. It was closure. Legal, permanent, and surgical. I contacted Goldstein the next morning and started the paperwork to fully sever all legal ties. No emergency contact access. No power of attorney. No beneficiary rights. Nothing. Every document, bank, medical, real estate, trust, updated. Then I sent them one final letter. Certified, notarized, tracked. It said simply, any further attempt to interfere with my assets or person will be considered harassment and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We are not family anymore. You are strangers to me. Do not contact me again. Then I signed it. Ethan Daniel Miller. Former son. You'd think that'd be the end, right? Legal walls in place. Boundaries sealed. Parental parasites thoroughly evicted from my life. But life has a way of testing your convictions right after you think you're done proving them. It was March 2nd, 2026, a Friday. I came home late after a brutal sprint week at work. Max met me at the door, tail wagging, as usual. But there was a box on the porch. No return address. No postage. Just my name. Scrawled in shaky, familiar handwriting. I brought it inside, sat at the kitchen island, and stared at it like it might explode. Inside, a photo album. The cheap kind, from Walgreens. Faux leather. The pages stuck together like it had been stored somewhere damp. On the first page was a post-it note. You might not want these. But someday, someone might ask what we looked like before we got so bitter. Love, Mom. I almost put it straight in the trash. But I didn't. I flipped through. There were photos of me as a baby. Chubby cheeks. Wobbly legs. First day of kindergarten. First piano recital. Me holding a soccer trophy I barely remembered winning. All pictures I hadn't seen in decades. Some I didn't even know existed. And then, around halfway through, there was one I did remember. Christmas, 1998. I was 7. Mia was barely 1. We were sitting on the floor, surrounded by wrapping paper. Mom was holding up a pair of socks like they were gold bars. Dad was behind the camcorder, cracking some joke I can't remember. And me, 7-year-old Ethan, was smiling so wide, it made my chest hurt just looking at it. I closed the album. Set it aside. Didn't cry. Not out of spite. I'd cried for them already. Bled every ounce of longing for a version of them that never existed. But it did something to me. Not forgiveness. Not softness. Just perspective. That weekend I sat down with Mia on the deck. The Rockies were still snow-capped, but the breeze had that early spring promise in it, like the whole world was about to bloom again if you just gave it a minute. I'm thinking about selling, I said. Mia blinked. The house? No. The company. I'd gotten an offer 2 months earlier. A fintech firm out of Chicago wanted to buy us out. Full acquisition. It would mean walking away with enough to never worry about money again. Do you want to? She asked. I looked at her. My sister. The only family that felt like home. I think I'm ready to build something that doesn't require a firewall around my heart. She grinned. What does that even mean? I don't know. Maybe something stupid. Like a retreat for kids from high-conflict families. Teach them code. Show them how to make their own doors, not just knock on ones that never open. Mia tilted her head. You're gonna turn a trauma arc into a nonprofit? Wouldn't be the first time. We toasted with lemon LaCroix and leftover pizza. That night I slept like a rock. First time in months. And in the morning I called my lawyer. Let's move forward. I said. Not out of anger. Not out of fear. But because healing, like justice, should come with interest. The sale closed on May 17th, 2026. 7 figures. Clean transfer. NDA thicker than a phone book. The buyer was a legacy fintech firm trying to reboot their reputation by acquiring scrappy startups. They got the product. I got my freedom. I paid Mia's student loans in full that night, wiring the money from my laptop while she sat across the kitchen table eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. When the confirmation pinged, she just blinked at me. Wait. That's it? It's just gone. Gone, I said. Like your ex. Except this time we're not pretending it's mutual. She laughed until milk came out her nose. Max barked like it was applause. I took the next 6 weeks to do something I'd never done before, nothing. I slept in. I cooked just because. I read paper books. I hiked. I deleted Slack. I sat on the deck with noise-canceling headphones and listened to music that had nothing to do with flow state or deep productivity. Then I booked a trip. 2 weeks in Portugal. Just me, a backpack, and a pair of trail runners. No itinerary. No expectations. Just space. And when I came back, the world was quieter. The house felt bigger, like it had exhaled in my absence. I started drafting the blueprint for Launchpad, the nonprofit I dreamed up with Mia. A summer immersion program for teens from chaotic homes. Coding, yes, but also soft skills. Negotiation. Boundaries. Apartment leases. How to advocate for yourself when no one else is listening. I called in favors. Got corporate sponsors. Found a campus to host us. And by fall, we were onboarding our first cohort. 12 kids, ages 14 to 17, all of them too smart and too angry for their own good. One of them, Luis, 15, shaved head, eyes like coals, asked me flat out during the second week. Why do you care? I looked at him, dead in the eye, and said, because no one should have to choose between being successful and being safe. He didn't answer. Just nodded once, sharp and slow. And from that day on, he showed up 5 minutes early. Meanwhile, Mia started dating a firefighter named Jonah who was so decent it gave me hives. Max adored him immediately. I tolerated him by default. Then one night, I caught them slow dancing in the kitchen to Whitney Houston while making pancakes, and I couldn't even pretend to be annoyed. I kept expecting something to crash. A new lawsuit. A letter. An ambush. But silence. Until December 15th, 2026. Mia knocked on my door holding an envelope. No return address, she said. I opened it with zero ceremony. Inside, one single sheet of notebook paper. Ethan, you made your point. We'll stop. We're tired. Mom is sick. I'm broke. I don't want to die like this. If you ever want to see me before that happens, you know where the motel is. Dad. No threats. No guilt bombs. Just entropy. Mia read over my shoulder and asked, You gonna go? I didn't answer for a long time. Then, no. She nodded. Want me to burn it? Already handled, I said, tossing it in the fireplace. The flames curled the paper inward, swallowed it whole. Some stories don't need sequels. Just endings. It was New Year's Eve, 2026. Snow dusted the backyard deck like powdered sugar. Max was curled under my chair, snoring gently. Mia was inside making puzzle, humming along to an old Selena playlist. Jonah was setting up sparklers in the yard like it was a mission-critical operation. The smell of lime, garlic, and roasted pork drifted through the open window. I stood at the edge of the deck, drink in hand, looking out over the city. The same view that once felt unreachable. Now it felt like mine. That's when I heard the screen door creak. Hey, said a voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. I turned. Sophia. My cousin. Grandma's other favorite. The only one besides me who hadn't tried to cash out her legacy like it was a slot machine. We'd lost touch after the probate battle. She'd moved to Albuquerque, started a family, vanished from the family group thread the minute it turned into a war zone. She stood there now with a tentative smile, snowflakes caught in her curls. Surprised you knew where to find me, I said. She held up her phone. Mia. And Google. I laughed, stepped forward, pulled her into a hug that felt like a reunion with a version of myself I'd forgotten. She smelled like pine and airport coffee. We talked for an hour, on the deck, huddled in blankets, feet thawing by the fire pit. About Grandma. About what came after. About her daughter, now 4, with a penchant for Lego dragons and biting anyone who talks too loud. You won, she said at one point. No, I replied. I just stopped losing. She nodded, slow and serious. They're still at that motel. Still fighting people who stopped fighting years ago. I know. I didn't come here to guilt you. she added quickly. I came to say I'm sorry. For not standing up louder. For ducking out. For surviving quietly. You're here now, I said. That counts. Mia came out with bowls of pozole and 0 questions. Just hugs and hot food. Jonah handed Sophia a sparkler like she'd always been part of the team. And that night, as the clock ticked toward midnight, we stood in a circle of old pain and new peace, and watched the sky light up with color. No drama. No lawsuits. No guilt trips. Just sparks. Laughter. Found family. The next morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table and wrote a single line in my journal. Some inherit houses. Some inherit wounds. I turned mine into doors. By early March 2027, life had settled into something dangerously close to calm. The Launchpad program had expanded. We now had 2 cohorts, a waiting list, and a small but scrappy staff who treated our kids like the future CEOs they were, just CEOs who also needed to be reminded to drink water and maybe stop throwing mechanical keyboards across the room when JavaScript didn't cooperate. I wasn't running it full-time. I'd hired a director, a total badass named Tasha who once taught coding inside a juvenile detention center, and could debug a back-end API while mediating a fight over charger cables. I played the part-time founder now. Oversight. Fundraising. Vision. And for the first time, I wasn't just living in the house, I was growing roots there. Mia was still in the basement, working nights, painting in the garage, slowly falling in love with Jonah, who now spent more nights on our couch than his own place. We were quiet people, healing in loud ways. Then, because the universe has a dark sense of humor, I got a call. From a nursing facility. One of those half-clinic, half-hospice places on the edge of town, tucked behind a Walgreens and a retirement community that only looked peaceful from the outside. Mr. Miller, the nurse said, voice delicate like it was made of tissue paper. We have your mother here. Marlene. I said nothing. She listed you as her emergency contact. You're still on the form. I know you didn't come before, but this time, it's serious. We'd appreciate a visit, even if it's brief. I hung up. Didn't go that day. Or the next. But 2 days later, I found myself parked outside the building, Max in the back seat, ears perked like he was sensing something beneath the silence. I told myself I wasn't going in. I told myself I was just curious. But I went in. She was thinner. Paler. Propped up in a recliner that looked like it had been salvaged from a church basement. She didn't recognize me at first. Then she blinked, squinted, and whispered, You look tired. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't cruel. It was just a fact. I sat in the hard chair beside her and said nothing. She asked for water. I poured it. She sipped. Her hand trembled. I miss Grandma, she said eventually. Me too. She closed her eyes. Do you think she'd forgive me? I paused. I think she'd be glad you asked. She didn't cry. Neither did I. I stayed 10 minutes. Left a granola bar on her tray table because I remembered she used to fake blood sugar crashes to get attention, and this time, I figured she might actually need the carbs. As I stood to go, she opened her eyes again and whispered, Are you happy? I didn't expect that. I thought about the house. The deck. The trust. The letters burned. The lawsuits won. The kids learning to code. The found family. The porch light always on. Yes, I said. I am. Then I walked out. And this time, I didn't look back. It was a Sunday morning in late April 2027 when the letter arrived. A real one. Handwritten. No motel stationery. No threats. No entitlement. Just a plain envelope, my name in blue ink, the handwriting shaky but familiar. Inside, a single-page note. Ethan. It's me. Your dad. She's gone. Passed last night in her sleep. I was there. She asked for you again. I told her you were doing good. That you were building something. She smiled a little. I think that was enough. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness. Not money. Not a place to stay. Just wanted you to know. Ron. No manipulation. No signature flourish. No PS with a guilt trip. Just a simple goodbye. I folded the letter, placed it in the back of the photo album from before, and put the whole thing in a drawer labeled Past. Closed. That same night, Mia and I sat on the deck. It was cool out. The string lights flickered like they always did when it rained earlier in the day, and Max had wedged himself between us like a furry emotional support loaf. Jonah was inside watching a documentary on volcanoes. Probably taking notes for one of his conspiracy theories about Yellowstone. Mia broke the silence first. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Weirdly, yeah. You don't feel?" "I don't know. Hello? I used to. But I think I already buried that version of them." She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "You know what Grandma would have said?" I grinned. "Don't let dead people steal your sleep." "Exactly." She paused, then added, "Are you going to the service?" "There's no service," I said. "Just cremation and a line on a ledger." We sat there a long time, letting the quiet stretch out like a sheet over an old couch you finally stop using. I thought I'd feel more. I admitted. "You don't have to," Mia said. "They spent their feelings. Cashed them out a long time ago." I nodded. "It's not grief. It's a final line in the ledger. A silence I don't have to fill anymore." The wind picked up, carried the smell of cut grass and spring rain. We toasted sparkling water cans, clinked them with a quiet kind of reverence. And just before we went inside, Mia looked up at the house and said, "This place really does feel like it's breathing easier now." And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't dared believe. I had broken the cycle. Not just survived it. I had outlived the people who tried to keep me small. And turned that survival into something better than spite. I turned it into a life. 2 weeks after Dad's letter, I got a call from Goldstein. "Odd one," he said. "Your father designated you as executor of his estate." I almost dropped my coffee. "His what?" "Technically, it's more of a box than an estate. There's no real property. No accounts. Just a storage locker in Aurora, prepaid for 6 months. Instructions were clear: open it alone. Up to you if you want to ignore it." I tried to. For 4 straight days. But curiosity, that old addict, finally won. The locker was in a beat-up facility off Alameda, wedged between a mattress recycling center and an abandoned nail salon. The clerk handed me a key like I just inherited pirate treasure. Inside the unit, one folding table, a broken flat screen, a half-deflated camping mattress, and a plastic tub labeled, "For Ethan." I sat on the floor and opened it like it might explode. Inside were documents. Old ones. My birth certificate. A copy of Grandma's trust, circled and highlighted like he tried to study it. A photo of me, age 10, in a Halloween costume I barely remembered, black cape, plastic vampire fangs, goofy smile. On the back, in ballpoint, "He was good once. Before we taught him different." Under that, a CD. No label. Just sharp it. 1996 home video. I didn't have a player at home. Mia found one on Facebook Marketplace for $10. We watched it together the next night. Grainy footage. Static lines. And there we were, me, 6 years old, in a Batman t-shirt, chasing Mia around the backyard while Dad filmed. You could hear him laughing. Genuinely. Not mocking. Not bitter. And in that 10 minutes of pixelated joy, something cracked in me, not love. Not longing. Just evidence. That there had once been a version of him who tried. Before the debts. Before the bitterness. Before the idea that his children owed him something just for surviving. I burned the disc the next day. Not in anger. In peace. Because ghosts deserve a funeral, too. And mine finally got one. The house is quiet tonight. Mia moved into her own place last month, still close, still home. Max sleeps curled at the foot of my bed, twitching through some dream I hope is gentle. I walk the halls slowly. My house. The one they tried to take. The one I turned into a refuge, a launch pad, a line in the sand. Quartz counters, gas stove, soft lights glowing like memory. On the mantel sits a small wooden frame. Not a family portrait. Not graduation. Just Grandma, arms crossed, eyes sharp, smirking like she knew all along this day would come. The mortgage is gone. Paid off last fall. The trust sits steady. The nonprofit grows. I live quietly, and I live fully. There's a new welcome mat outside. It reads, "If you're here for peace, come in. If not, keep walking." Sometimes I sit on the deck at sunset, alone, and whisper, "I made it." Not for applause. Not for forgiveness. Just for me. Because some stories aren't about winning. They're about ending what should have ended long ago. And building something better in its place.